silently through the cosmic ocean, its origin unknown, its purpose a mystery. You watch it move, slow and steady. There's no fear in the watching, only curiosity, only wonder. If it's natural, it's a marvel of cosmic accident, a fragment of another world that has traveled unimaginable distances to pass by ours. If it's artificial, it's a marvel of engineering and determination, proof that intelligence can reach across the void. Either way, it's beautiful. Either way, it reminds you that you're part of something larger, a species that looks up, that wonders, that sends machines to other planets to keep watch, that notices when silence falls where there should be signal. The water supports you, the stars shine above, and slowly, gently, you sink deeper into the warm darkness. Not drowning. There's no panic here. Just the peaceful descent into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet place where your mind can rest and restore itself. Part 14. The Promise of Morning. When you wake, and you will wake, refreshed and renewed, the mystery will still be there. 3i, Atlas, will still be approaching. Maven will still be silent. Scientists will still be coordinating in quiet rooms, discussing things they're not ready to share. But you'll face it all with clarity, with the resilience that comes from proper rest, with the perspective that comes from stepping back and seeing the larger pattern. Maybe someone will re-establish contact with Maven. Maybe the corrupted data can be recovered. Maybe ESA will decide to share their findings. Maybe December the 21st will bring revelations that change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. Or maybe none of that will happen. Maybe the mystery will deepen. Maybe we'll watch 3i, Atlas, pass by and continue wondering, the questions unanswered, the silence unbroken. Both possibilities are acceptable. Both are part of being human in an incomprehensibly vast cosmos. We don't get all the answers. We don't solve every puzzle. We live with uncertainty, and somehow that's enough. Part 15. Good night, traveler. The stars continue their ancient dance. Mars orbits the sun, carrying its silent sentinel. 3i, Atlas, falls inward, counting down the distance to its closest approach. And you rest here, safe and warm, on a small planet that somehow produced beings capable of noticing all of this, capable of wondering, capable of sending machines to watch distant worlds and distant visitors. Sleep now, dear listener. Let the mysteries of the cosmos wait until tomorrow. Let Maven's silence be a problem for NASA's engineers. Let 3i, Atlas, be a question for astronomers to puzzle over. Tonight, you are released from all of it. Tonight, you simply exist, breathing slowly, resting deeply, dreaming whatever dreams come. The universe is vast. Time is long. Mysteries are abundant. And you are exactly where you need to be here, now, safe, drifting into the peaceful darkness of sleep. When December comes, when the longest night arrives, when 3i, Atlas, makes its closest approach, you'll be ready, rested, clear-minded, open to whatever truth reveals itself. But that's for later. For now, just sleep. Just breathe. Just let go. The visitor is coming. But not tonight. Tonight belongs to rest, to peace, to dreams. This has been Lunar Insomnia Zen. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be gentle. When you wake, the stars will still be there, waiting to share their secrets. Until then, good night. The universe is watching over you. Good night, traveler. Good night. Welcome to Inner Peace Portal. Tonight we move slowly. Sit with your breath. Let the friction of urgency ease away. In this space we do not demand answers. We gather questions and hold them like seeds. We will follow a quiet visitor from the deep between stars. 3I, Atlas. We will not chase hysteria or sensationalism. Instead, we will listen to facts, to small wonders, and to the inner echoes they stir within us. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the cosmos arrive gently. In the dark that lies between suns, there is a kind of silence older than memory. It is not empty, it is patient. It carries motes of ice and stone like scattered thoughts. Among those motes was one we would later name 3I, Atlas. It had drifted from its origin, for times beyond our counting, a minor aggregation of dust and frozen gas, shaped by forces we only begin to understand. On the 1st of July, 2025, in the high desert where clear air makes the sky feel like a vast bowl of glass, a telescope recorded a motion that had not been seen before. Astronomers marked its speed, plotted its path, and realized with quiet thrill that here was something not bound to our Sunday. Its orbit declared it a stranger, an eccentricity greater than one. It would touch our neighborhood for a while and then continue, indifferent, as all true travelers are. That discovery smelled of coffee and warmth, and the slow, meticulous joy of work. Well done. For many, it meant new science, a sample from a place our instruments had not yet visited, a story told in carbon and ice. For others, it soon became something else. In rooms with poor light, and in message boards where conjecture can harden into conviction overnight, the comet acquired an identity far more dramatic than its composition warranted. People whispered and drew connections between disparate events until a new narrative emerged, not scientific, but mythic. 3I, Atlas, some said, was not a messenger, but an instrument of erasure. They looked back to Mars and to its lost seas. They remembered that long ago, Mars had been warmer, wetter, perhaps even alive, in its own small ways. Then the air thinned and the oceans faded. It is an absence that presses on imagination like a cool hand. Questions settled into certainty for some. What if this interstellar visitor had the power to strip atmospheres? What if Mars's winter had been thieved by a passing stranger like this? These are the narratives that grew out of fear and the irresistible human hunger to place cause where only time and complexity belonged. Yet the science told another, quieter story. Observations from great and patient instruments, among them the James Webb Space Telescope, revealed a coma dominated by carbon dioxide, a chemical signature consistent with formation in a very cold environment. Its polarization patterns, odd and informative, hinted not at malice, but at a material history different from the comets born in our own system. Its size estimates ranged from a fraction of a kilometer to a few kilometers. Substantial, yes, but hardly a cosmic engine. On the 29th of October, 2025, it reached perihelion, the nearest point to our Sun during this passage. It warmed, it shed material, it glowed, like any other comet that has been seen by patient eyes for centuries. There was no evidence of exotic fields or destructive intent. Still, rumor has a stubborn life of its own. When scientific language says, carefully, we do not yet fully understand, that phrase can be misread as we hide something, and once that mistrust grows, it is hard to calm. The comet drifted on, and online the stories multiplied. Illustrations of magnetized tails tearing away atmospheres, claims stitched to long-ago mysteries, prophecies invoked like proofs. The modern mind is hydraulic with information and yet porous to fear. It will transmit the fanciful and hoard it like dry leaves for the next spark. For those who observed without haste, the comet was instead an opportunity to remember humility. The universe had delivered to our instruments a relic from a place no telescope had yet charted in detail. It reminded us that while our cosmos is indifferent, it is not malevolent. It does not conspire against life. It does not prefer our demise. It simply is. And in that being, there is both challenge and solace. In the small hours of a winter night, as Earth rotated under indifferent stars, there were different gatherings. Families that stared up and told old stories. Classrooms where teachers turned the comet into a lesson about scale. Lonely watchers who found an odd comfort in the idea of a visitor from elsewhere. Fear and wonder inhabited the same landscape, and sometimes one softened the other. Some folks who had started with anxiety found, through patient reading, that numbers and distances can be a salve. The comet would not approach closer than roughly 1.8 astronomical units on the 19th of December, 2025. Distances in the cosmos, enormous and abstract, can become intimate when we translate them into the quiet language of days and breath. And then there were the researchers who did the difficult work of turning photons into meaning. They compared spectroscopic lines, modeled outgassing, and tracked the subtle changes in coma brightness. Each new measurement was a small hymn to careful labor. When the data accumulated, the conclusion was consistent. 3I Atlas behaved as a natural comet, albeit one with distinctions born of its place of origin. There was no anomalous magnetism, no evidence of engineered structure, no traces that suggested an agent out to harm our world. But what of story? Human beings are pattern makers. Given the mysterious and the vast, we are likely to lay a story over it, a pattern of cause and intention that assigns agency and, with it, meaning. The Internet is fertile ground for such patterns to bloom. There, threads form into claims, and claims into collective certainty, and the certainty feeds back into our imagination until it becomes a piece of the cultural landscape. This is not merely a failure of reason, it is part of what makes us human. Stories are not only instruments of error, they are also vessels of identity. They allow us to say we, to mobilize empathy and imagination, to teach moral cautions in the language of events that could be felt intimately. In the case of 3I Atlas, the mythic version, the planet stripper, the harbinger told something. It told about the vulnerability we feel in the face of cosmic scales. It told about our desire to be seen by the universe itself, and to have our dramas mirrored back by its events. Yet for those committed to clarity, the comet was an invitation to practice a different art, the art of attentive disbelief. Not disbelief as cynicism, but as careful inquiry. It is the discipline to hold a claim up to light and test its seams. It asks for exactness in dates and numbers, and a taste for context. How far does a magnetic field extend? What mass would be necessary to exert a global atmospheric influence? What data would one expect if an atmosphere were being actively stripped by an external agent? Answers to such questions are not instantaneous. They require instruments and time, and the rigorous humility of those who accept provisional knowledge. In the meantime, the public needs narratives that do not inflame, but inform. Stories that can hold the heart and the mind simultaneously. That is the balance Inner Peace Portal seeks. To witness curiosity without letting it erupt into panic. To respect wonder without mistaking it for certainty. As the comet completed its passage, as dates on calendars turned into the 29th of December and then into the quiet of months that come after, an important thing happened. People slept. Life continued. Newspapers printed analysis and then moved on to other items. Social feeds that had been frenetic smoothed into their habitual textures. The comet receded into the long dark where it had come from, and with it passed the immediate burst of apocalyptic anxiety. But the episode left residue not of calamity, but of reflection. For some, it prompted a renewed interest in science. Children sought the names of telescopes. Adults read about spectroscopy. For others, it became a parable about the way fear can turn absence into narrative. For still others, it was a quiet reminder that our planet is precious and fragile. A point easily lost in the vastness, but no less true. The lesson was not that the comet had been a danger averted. It was that our response to the unknown reveals the architecture of our own thinking. If one looks at the comet's passage through a less anthropocentric lens, something gentle is revealed. The cosmos will send mysteries and not demand explanation. It will not wait for us, nor resent us. Celestial objects pass, carrying with them the cold memory of other systems, the chemical signatures of places where planets and dust and perhaps life once stirred. Those signatures are generous. They grant us a brief sample to study and to learn from. To study is to practice reverence. When astronomers point instruments at a faint nucleus and coax from it a spectrum, they are acting like careful readers of a very old book. Each absorption line is a word, each emission peak a phrase. The story encoded in 3I, Atlas's light, is not a moral tale. It is a physical narrative about conditions in another part of the galaxy. That narrative enriches our own knowledge. It expands the grammar of what is possible in planetary formation and volatile chemistry. It does not, however, carry intention against us. This is an important cognitive discipline, to parse the natural world without the automatic overlay of personal will. Stars do not conspire. Comets do not strategize. What we call threat is often the projection of our fear onto processes that operate at scales unconcerned with us. That projection is powerful. There is also a countervailing human impulse to find consolation in scale. For many, the thought that a small object from deep space could imperil us is profoundly frightening. For others, the same thought is exalting, because it offers a test of our knowledge and an opportunity to exercise community and reason. In the story of 3I, Atlas, both responses were present. Communities gathered to discuss mitigation for hypothetical threats. They practiced translating fear into useful questions. That utility is one of the finer after-effects of such events. They compel us to maintain an infrastructure of awareness and to hone our communicative capacities. Near the close of the comet's visible chapter, a quiet scene occurred in a small town far from observatories. An elderly man and his granddaughter laid on a blanket and watched the sky, not to find doom, but to honor how small and luminous the sky makes one feel. The child asked a question about why the comet had come. He answered, with a softness born of a life learned to keep perspective. It did not come for us. It came as comets do. But we saw it, and that made us more curious. And curious is how we learn to be kinder to what we know. Such moments exemplify the deeper, gentler lesson of cosmic events, that they can enlarge our empathy instead of undermining it. After the comet receded, the scientific community continued to publish detailed analyses. They catalogued the chemical abundances, the grain sizes inferred from scattering, the structure of jets within the coma, the subtle ways the brightness changed with distance. Each paper was an offering to a shared archive of knowledge. Rather than feeding panic, these studies fed curiosity and the slow accumulation of public understanding. The story of 3I, Atlas, then, becomes less about the object itself and more about how we interpret the presence of the strange in our midst. It is about the habits of mind we choose when faced with uncertainty. Do we default to narratives that magnify fear? Or do we hold the unknown as an invitation to learn, to be measured and brave in our curiosity? At Inner Peace Portal, we urge the latter, to be brave in curiosity, to be measured in worry, to cultivate a steady eye and a tender heart. The comet's passage was brief on cosmic timescales, but long for those who watched. Its after effects will ripple in the forms of increased inquiry, clearer public science communication, and perhaps a more patient public. In the end, 3I Atlas returned to its wandering, carrying the faint imprint of our attention with it. The stars accept our gaze and go on in their patient cycles. The comet's tail is not a tragedy. It is a mirror. It shows how smallness can lead to fear, and how fear can be alchemized into understanding. It shows that when we respond to the unknown with care, we build a wiser world. So as you close this story, carry with you a small practice. When you hear the next rumor that quickens the pulse, pause. Breathe in once and count to 4. Breathe out and count to 4. Ask, what are the facts? Then ask, what fears are speaking beneath the facts? In that gentle interrogation, you will find the balance between heart and mind. The universe is wide. It has room for mystery and for the slow light of understanding. 3I Atlas, past, indifferent and beautiful. A tiny archive of another world's climate, another system's slow chemistry. It gave us a chance to practice, not panic, but attention. We end with a simple thought in the soft register of night, that the cosmos includes us and also exceeds us, holding both danger and wonder in its weave. Our task is not to conquer it with fear, but to learn from it with humility. May this quiet encounter leave you steadier. May your curiosity deepen. May you find in the night sky not a harbinger, but a companion in small, luminous things. Breathe slowly. Breathe thoroughly. You are part of this vast story, and that is, in itself, a comfort. Hello, celestial dreamers, and welcome once again to Bedtime Universe. Tonight, we journey not to a distant nebula or a forgotten star, but to a moment in our very recent past. A moment suspended between profound discovery and profound silence. It is a story of a traveler from an unknown shore, an object that journeyed for eons through the interstellar dark, only to arrive at our doorstep at the most peculiar of times. This is a tale of a government that went dark, a space agency that fell silent, and an alien comet that kept its secrets as the world watched and waited in a state of suspended animation. So, find a comfortable position, let the noise of your day recede like a distant tide, and allow your mind to drift. Tonight, we explore the enigma of 3I divided by Atlas, and the unnerving coincidence that turned a scientific marvel into a modern mystery. Our story begins on a date now etched into the memory of a select few astronomers and space enthusiasts. October 1st, 2025. It began not with a bang, but with a quiet, administrative whimper. Across the United States, a budget impasse in Washington, D.C., triggered a full government shutdown. For most federal agencies, this meant furlough notices, locked doors, and a frustrating pause on public services. But for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, it meant something more profound. It meant switching off the lights on humanity's window to the universe. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, Dr. Elias Vance watched as the sprawling campus emptied out. He was a mission planner, a man whose life was dictated by orbital mechanics and celestial timetables. His normally vibrant control room, a cathedral of data streams and cosmic chatter, was now hushed, populated only by a skeleton crew designated as essential personnel. Their job was not discovery, but preservation. To protect life and property, to keep the multi-billion-dollar spacecraft scattered across the solar system from falling silent forever. The International Space Station would continue to orbit, its crew safe. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter would keep flying, but the flow of information, the very lifeblood of science and public engagement, was being severed at the source. The main NASA.gov website was replaced with a stark closure notice. The endless stream of breathtaking images on social media ceased. NASA TV went off the air. A procedural silence, mandated by the arcane articles of the Anti-Deficiency Act, had descended. Under normal circumstances, this would have been a source of immense professional frustration. But these were not normal circumstances. For on this exact day, at this precise moment in the grand cosmic ballet, an object of immense scientific importance was gliding into the most opportune observation window humanity had ever been granted. Its name was 3I divided by Atlas. The 3I designated it as the third confirmed interstellar object ever detected. The first, 1I Oumuamua in 2017, had been a bizarre, cigar-shaped enigma that left scientists debating its nature for years. The second, 2I divided by Borisov in 2019, had been more comfortingly familiar, behaving much like a typical comet from our own Oort cloud. 3I divided by Atlas, discovered just 3 months prior on July 1st, 2025, was the next chapter, a new data point in a field of study so young it barely had a textbook. It was following a hyperbolic trajectory, the mathematical signature of an unbound object, a cosmic tourist just passing through. It was a physical fragment of another star system, a time capsule carrying the chemical fingerprints of its alien birthplace, and it was heading for a close encounter, not with Earth, but with Mars. The orbital geometry was a gift from the heavens. Between October 1st and October 7th, 3I divided by Atlas would make its closest approach to the red planet, passing within a mere 30 million kilometers. From Earth, the comet was difficult to see during this period, positioned at a low solar elongation, meaning it was lost in the sun's glare. Our ground-based telescopes were effectively blinded, but our robotic emissaries orbiting Mars had a front-row seat. They could observe the comet from a perfect side-on angle, unhindered by the sunday. This was the plan, a coordinated, multi-agency campaign. While NASA's assets were formidable, the European Space Agency, ESA, had been exceptionally transparent about their intentions. Their Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter spacecraft were prepped and ready. Their mission, scientists had given interviews, their excitement palpable. They aimed to study the comet's coma, measure its outgassing activity, and hopefully capture spectra that could reveal its composition. The world of planetary science was buzzing. Then, the lights went out. As ESA's spacecraft began their meticulously planned observations, NASA's public-facing infrastructure went completely dark. Elias Vance and his essential colleagues could ensure the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, and its powerful high-rise camera remained operational, but they were legally prohibited from engaging in any activity not directly related to protecting the spacecraft. Science planning was a gray area. Public data release was out of the question. A veil of silence was drawn over NASA's entire Mars fleet. The contrast was stark and immediate. ESA continued to issue updates, their scientists speaking to media outlets about the ongoing campaign. From America, there was nothing. This asymmetry created an information vacuum, and, as is always the case, speculation rushed in to fill it. The Internet, a place where curiosity and paranoia dance a tangled tango, began to buzz. Threads on Reddit and deep dive videos on YouTube started connecting the dots. Isn't the timing a little too perfect? One user asked. NASA discovers something huge with 3I divided by Atlas and uses the shutdown as the perfect cover to classify it. The whispers grew into a roar. Claims began to surface, unverified but compelling. Some swore they saw raw image files from MRO briefly appear on a public server before being scrubbed. Others, examining pre-shutdown data, claimed to find evidence of unscheduled maneuvers, tiny burns from the comet that couldn't be explained by natural outgassing. The most tantalizing rumor centered on the comet's composition. Leaked whispers from anonymous sources hinted at preliminary spectra showing unusually strong nickel emission lines. Nickel, a metal, is not unheard of in comets, but the reported abundance was anomalous. This, combined with early mass estimates from Hubble data that were on the high end of the uncertainty range, painted a picture of an object that was far denser than a typical ball of ice and rock, a metallic monster, as one headline sensationally dubbed it. From his quieted station, Elias could only watch the storm of speculation unfold, a helpless bystander to the narrative being woven in the absence of fact. He knew the mundane truth. He had read NASA's continuity of operations plan. He understood the legal constraints, but he also understood the optics. The silence looked like concealment. The timing looked like a conspiracy. To understand the mystery, one must understand the competing hypotheses that bloomed in that quiet October week. They ranged from the mundane to the truly extraordinary. Hypothesis 1, the most likely and the most boring, was that of bureaucratic coincidence. The shutdown was a simple, unfortunate alignment of political failure and celestial mechanics. NASA's silence was procedural, not intentional. Any data collected was simply sitting in a queue, waiting for the shutdown to end and for furloughed scientists to return to their desks to process it. Nothing was hidden. It was just delayed. This was the explanation favored by Occam's razor. The simplest answer is often the correct one. Hypothesis 2 was the massive metallic core. This theory latched onto the nickel rumors and the ambiguous mass estimates. It proposed that 3I divided by Atlas was not a comet in the traditional sense, but a fragment of the iron-nickel core of a shattered exoplanet or large planetesimal. Such objects, called differentiated bodies, have heavy metals sink to their center. A catastrophic impact in its home system could have blasted a piece of this core into interstellar space. This would make 3I divided by Atlas a scientific treasure trove, a solid piece of the deep interior of an alien world. The implications for planetary formation and for future resource mining were immense. Hypothesis 3 was the shadow that had lingered ever since Oumuamua, the engineered or technological artifact. This was the most sensational theory, suggesting 3I divided by Atlas was not natural at all. It could be an active probe, a derelict spacecraft, or a piece of alien megastructure. Proponents of this idea, led by vocal astronomers like Avi Loeb, who had championed the same possibility for Oumuamua, argued that we must remain open to the possibility. Any non-gravitational acceleration not clearly linked to cometary outgassing, any structured light curve, or, the ultimate smoking gun, any coherent radio signals, would be evidence. No such evidence had been confirmed, but in the information vacuum, its absence was not enough to quell the speculation. Then came the deeper, darker theories. Hypothesis 4 suggested a third-party intervention. Could a nation with secret advanced space capabilities, the US, China, or Russia, have used the Mars window to conduct a covert rendezvous or inspection mission? It sounded like science fiction, but the theorists argued that a metal-rich object of unknown origin would be of immense national security interest. The shutdown would provide the perfect cover for such a clandestine operation. This bled into Hypothesis 5, black budget data capture. This theory proposed that even if no physical intervention occurred, military and intelligence assets like the National Reconnaissance Office's spy satellites or the Space Force's Advanced Tracking Radar had observed 3I, divided by Atlas. Their data, which would be far more detailed than anything NASA or ESA could produce, would be instantly classified. The public would never see it. The silence from NASA wasn't just a consequence of the shutdown. It was part of a coordinated effort to keep the real data under wraps. Finally, there was a more grounded scientific possibility. Hypothesis 6, a planetary interaction event. This theory suggested that the close pass by Mars itself triggered a transient event. Perhaps a gust of solar wind, interacting with Mars's weak magnetosphere, simultaneously hit the comet, causing a temporary, dramatic brightening or an outburst of gas that was misinterpreted by early observers. This would be a fascinating scientific discovery, an observable interaction between a comet and a planetary environment, but entirely natural. For weeks, these 6 narratives battled for dominance in the public sphere. Elias Vance and thousands of other scientists could only wait. The shutdown dragged on. The comet passed its perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, in late October, and then swung behind it, entering a period of solar conjunction, where it was completely invisible from Earth. The dead zone of the Mars window was followed by a natural blackout. Finally, in mid-November, the political stalemate broke. Funding was restored. NASA's websites flickered back to life. Furloughed employees returned, blinking in the sudden light, to face a mountain of backlogged work. For Elias, the real work could now begin. It was a process he called data rescue. He and his team began the painstaking task of retrieving, processing, and calibrating the data collected by MRO and other assets during the shutdown. Simultaneously, they began to coordinate with their counterparts at ESA, who were already well into their own analysis. The first pieces of the puzzle began to click into place. ESA's data from Mars Express was clean and comprehensive. It showed a clearly active comet with a coma and tail. The spectroscopy did confirm the presence of nickel, but at levels that, while high, were not entirely outside the realm of possibility for a comet formed in a metal-rich protoplanetary disk. There were no sudden, inexplicable maneuvers. The light curve was consistent with an irregularly shaped, tumbling nucleus, not a controlled, structured object. Then came NASA's data. After weeks of processing, the first images from MRO were released. They were not the crystal-clear, revelatory pictures the conspiracy theorists had hoped for. As predicted by the laws of optics, at a distance of 30 million kilometers, 3I divided by Atlas was little more than a fuzzy, overexposed blob at the center of a star field. The valuable data was in the photometry, the precise measurement of its brightness, not in its shape. And that data, when cross-referenced with ESA's, matched perfectly. Both agencies had seen the same thing: a comet, behaving like a comet. The final piece of the puzzle arrived in late November and December. As 3I divided by Atlas emerged from behind the Sun, a global network of ground-based observatories, from professionals in Chile to amateurs in their backyards, locked onto it. Its trajectory was plotted with exquisite precision. The orbit fit the model of a hyperbolic path, influenced by a slight but entirely normal, non-gravitational force, consistent with outgassing of volatile ices like water and carbon monoxide. There was no evidence of a high-density, metallic core deflecting its path. Radio telescopes, including a concerted campaign by the SETI Institute, scanned it relentlessly. They found only the quiet hiss of the cosmos. The grand mystery of 3I divided by Atlas resolved itself not with a shocking revelation, but with the steady, quiet accumulation of collaborative, verifiable data. The mundane explanation, Hypothesis 1, proved to be the correct one. The shutdown had been a deeply frustrating, scientifically damaging, but ultimately simple coincidence. The silence was not a cover-up. It was a consequence of policy. The comet was not an alien messenger. It was a fascinating but natural piece of another world. For Elias Vance, the experience left a lasting mark. The story of 3I divided by Atlas became a powerful lesson. It revealed the fragility of our scientific infrastructure and the critical need for transparency. In an age of rampant misinformation, silence from trusted institutions is no longer a neutral act. It is an invitation for the darkest, most compelling fictions to take root. The incident spurred a quiet but significant policy review within NASA about how to maintain a minimal, essential line of public communication during future shutdowns. 3I divided by Atlas continued its journey, fading back into the interstellar darkness from which it came. Its brief, chaotic visit to our solar system complete. It left no smoking gun, no alien message, but it left a legacy, a reminder that the search for truth is a global, collaborative effort, and that sometimes the greatest mysteries are not hidden in the stars, but in the human systems we build to observe them. And so, the traveler departed, leaving us with more data, more questions, and a profound lesson in the importance of an open dialogue with the cosmos. The mystery of 3I divided by Atlas was not one of alien technology, but of human communication. It reminds us that in the quest for knowledge, the greatest obstacle is sometimes not the vast distance between stars, but the walls we build between ourselves. A humbling thought to carry with you into your dreams. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the quiet corridors of space and policy. We hope this story has given you something to ponder as you drift off to sleep. Until our next celestial story, from all of us here at Bedtime Universe, keep your eyes on the stars and your minds open to wonder. Sleep well, and may your dreams be as vast as the universe itself. Welcome to Lunar Insomnia Zen, where the mysteries of the cosmos meet the comfort of twilight. Tonight, we drift through the vast darkness of space, guided by starlight and wonder. Let your breathing slow, your mind expand, and allow yourself to float weightlessly as we explore a story written in the language of the universe itself. Close your eyes, settle into your blankets, and let the infinite sky cradle you as we journey together into the depths of space and time. Part 1. The Discovery. In the summer of 2025, as the Earth spun quietly through its familiar orbit, a team of astronomers working at the Atlas Survey Facility made an observation that would change everything. It was the first day of July. Let's call it July the 1st. Year 2025, and their automated telescopes, as they did every clear night, were scanning the heavens for anything unusual. Comets, asteroids, the transient flashes of distant supernovae. But what they found that night was different. Moving through the constellation of Ursa Major, cutting across the familiar patterns of stars that humanity had watched for millennia, was something that didn't belong. An object. Small, perhaps only a few hundred meters across, but moving fast, incredibly fast, and most importantly, moving in completely the wrong direction. They named it 3I, Atlas. The 3I meant it was only the third interstellar object ever confirmed by humanity. The first had been Oumuamua, that strange cigar-shaped visitor that had baffled scientists back in 2017. The second was Borisov, a more conventional interstellar comet discovered in 2019. And now this, the third messenger from beyond. Imagine floating in the absolute silence of space, watching this object as it moves. No sound, no air, just the cold, perfect darkness punctuated by distant stars. The object itself is dark too, barely reflecting any sunlight, tumbling slowly as it travels. Where did it come from? What distant star system ejected it millions of years ago? Was it born in the chaos of planetary formation, flung outward by the gravity of a giant planet? Or perhaps something else launched it, something with intention? The astronomers calculated its trajectory. It had come from outside our solar system, passing through the plane of the planets, at an angle, moving at tens of thousands of miles per hour relative to the Sunday. It would swing through our neighborhood briefly, a cosmic stranger passing through, and then continue onward into the infinite dark, perhaps never encountering another star system for millions of years. Let your breathing match the rhythm of its journey. They published their findings. Observatories around the world turned their instruments toward this tiny speck. Scientists began modeling its orbit, trying to trace it backward through the galaxy to find its home. Was it from Vega? From the Pleiades? From some unnamed red dwarf in the vast wilderness between the spiral arms? But before the world could fully absorb this discovery, something else happened. Something impossible. Part 2. The Flash. 24 hours later, July the 2nd, year 2025, satellites in Earth orbit. Instruments designed to detect the most violent explosions in the universe registered an event, a gamma-ray burst. Gamma-ray bursts are the brightest electromagnetic events known to occur in the universe. They typically come from the deaths of massive stars, collapsing into black holes billions of light-years away, or from the collision of neutron stars, creating ripples in space-time itself. They release more energy in a few seconds than our sun will produce in its entire 10 billion-year lifetime. They are always distant, always ancient light, traveling for eons across the cosmos before reaching our instruments. This burst was designated GRB 250702b. Just another catalog number, just another cosmic explosion in a universe full of them. Astronomers would measure it, classify it, publish a paper, and move on to the next one. Except for one thing. One impossible, stunning, reality-bending thing. The burst came from the same direction as 3I, Atlas. Imagine you're floating in the darkness now, suspended in the vastness. To your left, moving steadily, is the interstellar object, dark, silent, ancient. And suddenly, from the exact same direction, a flash, not the gentle light of distant stars, but a focused beam of pure energy. Gamma rays, invisible to your eyes but burning with the intensity of cosmic creation itself. The same patch of sky, the same sector. Within 24 hours, the official reports used careful language. The same general region of the sky, they said. An interesting coincidence, they noted. The burst was classified as a standard long-duration gamma-ray burst, probably from a collapsing star in a distant galaxy. The fact that an interstellar object happened to be discovered from roughly the same direction just one day earlier was simply that, a coincidence. The universe is vast. Random alignments happen. There was no connection. But let's think about this more carefully. The way we think about things in the quiet hours before sleep, when the rational mind softens and deeper patterns emerge. Part 3. The geometry of silence. Imagine you're standing in a dark field at night, looking up at the stars. Someone tells you that two unrelated objects appeared in the same general region of the sky. You might picture them being in the same constellation, perhaps separated by the width of your hand held at arm's length. That seems like it could be a coincidence. But what if they told you the truth in more precise terms? What if the angular separation was less than the width of a single finger? What if, accounting for the margins of error in both observations, They were aligned to within a fraction of a degree. What if they were pointing at each other? The public reports were technically accurate. The two events did occur in the same general region. But that phrasing masks something extraordinary. When you examine the actual coordinates, the actual error boxes where the instruments localized these events, the overlap becomes striking. Tighter than publicly emphasized. Much tighter. No formal scientific paper has been published that overlays the three-dimensional trajectory of 3I Atlas with the uncertainty region of GRB 250702b. No one has officially mapped them together in space and time and asked the uncomfortable question, could these events be connected? Let's drift deeper into the mystery now, like sinking into the comfort of your pillow, letting go of the need for immediate answers. Part 4. The physics of arrival. Here's where we need to think about something strange. Something that comes from the laws of physics that govern fast-moving objects. When something moves close to the speed of light, reality itself warps around it. Time slows down, space contracts, and light radiation behaves in unusual ways. It gets compressed ahead of the moving object, focused like a searchlight pointing in the direction of travel. Think about a bullet fired from a gun. The gunpowder explodes, and that explosion produces light, a muzzle flash. But here's the key. If you're standing in front of the gun, you see the flash at almost exactly the same moment the bullet arrives. The light and the projectile travel at nearly the same speed over short distances. You don't see the flash first and then wait for the bullet. They arrive together. Now imagine something moving at 99% of the speed of light, or faster, if such a thing were possible through some manipulation of space-time we don't yet understand. At those speeds, the radiation produced by the object, whether from friction with interstellar medium, or from a deceleration mechanism, or from any process at all, arrives just slightly before the object itself. If you were watching such an object approach, you wouldn't see it coming, not until the very last moment, because the light carrying the information about its approach is only barely outrunning the object. First, you'd see a flash, a burst of radiation from dead ahead. Then, perhaps within hours or days, the object itself would arrive. Let yourself feel the immensity of that idea. An object approaching from the deep cosmos, fast enough that we have almost no warning. The flash we interpret as a distant explosion might actually be a braking maneuver, a deceleration, a slowing down from relativistic speeds that produces a tremendous release of energy that streams ahead of the object as it enters our local space. Part 5. The nature of coincidence. In the comfortable darkness of your room right now, safe and warm, consider what coincidence really means. If you flip a coin and it lands on heads, that's not surprising. Even if you flip it and get heads 5 times in a row, it's unlikely but not shocking. But what if the coin landed on its edge? What if it landed on heads every time you flipped it, 100 times in a row? What if it landed on heads, and at that exact moment, a meteor struck your house? At some point, we stop calling things coincidence and start looking for connections. Here are the elements of our story. First, we have an interstellar object, only the third ever discovered, a rare event in itself. These objects are so uncommon that each discovery makes international news. Second, we have a gamma-ray burst, which happens somewhere in the observable universe, maybe once per day. But from any particular direction in the sky, they're incredibly rare. Third, these two events occurred within 24 hours of each other. Fourth, they came from the same narrow region of space, aligned to within the measurement uncertainties. Fifth, the gamma-ray burst had unusual characteristics. Its duration was odd. Its afterglow pattern was structured and anomalous, not matching the standard profiles of stellar collapse or neutron-star merger. Sixth, the distance to the gamma-ray burst remains uncertain. Typically, these bursts are so far away that measuring their distance involves detecting a galaxy at the same location and measuring its redshift, how much the expansion of the universe has stretched its light. But GRB 250702b's afterglow was ambiguous. The redshift measurements were unclear. Some analyses suggested it might be much closer than a typical GRB. Perhaps local. Perhaps even within our own galaxy's neighborhood. Let each of these facts settle into your mind like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward. If the burst was distant, billions of light years away, then yes, it's a remarkable coincidence. But coincidences happen in a universe with billions of galaxies. But if the burst was close, then the geometric alignment matters enormously. Then we're not talking about two unrelated events that happen to appear in the same direction across the vast emptiness of intergalactic space. We're talking about two events that occurred in the same local volume of space at the same time. We're talking about causality. Part 6. The Silence of Authority. As you sink deeper toward sleep, consider how knowledge spreads through our world. Scientists make observations. They analyze data. They write papers. The papers undergo peer review. Eventually, a consensus forms, and that consensus becomes the official story. The truth we teach in schools. The narrative we accept. But what happens when the data is ambiguous? When the official classification relies on assumptions that might not be fully tested? When careful language like the same general region, technically accurate, but emotionally misleading. The scientists who classified GRB 250702b as a conventional distant burst were not lying. They followed standard procedures. They made reasonable assumptions based on typical GRB characteristics. And faced with an anomalous data, they chose the most conventional interpretation. Because the alternative, the possibility that this burst was connected to the interstellar object, that it represented something other than a natural stellar explosion, was too extraordinary to propose without overwhelming evidence. And perhaps they were right to be cautious. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as the saying goes. But here, in the darkness, in the liminal space between waking and sleep, we can ask questions that don't fit into academic papers. We can wonder about the things that official reports set aside. What if 3I, Atlas, wasn't just a rock? What if it was something else? A probe, a ship, something launched by intelligence from another star system, traveling for hundreds of thousands of years across the frozen void, carrying what? Information? Life? A message? And what if that flash, that gamma-ray burst, was the signature of its arrival? The cosmic equivalent of air brakes. The friction of space-time itself as something slowed from nearly light speed down to velocities where it could be observed, studied, understood. What if, on July the 1st, year 2025, humanity detected an interstellar visitor, not because we were good at astronomy, but because it wanted to be found? Part 7. The Implications of Contact. Let yourself drift